So thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm really excited for today's session. This is our second advancement Tableau user group. I'm joined by my wonderful co-leaders, Jesse Radar and Mohammed Dasser. And I'm happy to share that since our last meeting, our group has expanded considerably. We zoomed past the 500 person mark. I think we're at 630 so far. We have 40 people who have offered to present, which is so cool. There's the nonprofit, higher ed, and fundraising space as a whole, and advancement is an engine of creativity and ingenuity, and all of these things, as I'm looking forward to seeing today, are revenue generating. And so for those who have offered to present, we are getting through the list, and there are 40 people, so it's going to take a little time. And just a heads up that if you have offered to present, we're going to go through the yeses first, and then we'll work our way up through the maybe. So if you want to upgrade to a yes, we will be in contact soon. Let me just show you our agenda for today. Before I forget, I just got excited because today I got to wear my new shirt, which is like kind of a Viz shirt. It's the sun and then Earth. And I was like, that is so cool. Like 1.3 million times bigger. I just felt like this audience could appreciate that. Thanks for indulging me. All right, so we are going to have our first raffle in a second, and Michelle is going to pick a random number, and we're going to pull up the random number generator dashboard. We're going to then hand it over to Katie and Michelle for their sessions. We're going to have a closing and a second giveaway. So that is coming up. So let me share my screen here and pull up the random generator. Hopefully it works as expected. You never know with these live demos. So Michelle, if you want to give us a random number from 1 to 260, it's the number of people. I think we had 300 people registered. Some of them are invalid. So can you give me a number from 1 to 260?
All right. I feel like I'm doing the lottery. The number is 54.
54. Okay, that's exciting. This is for a $50 gift card to the Tableau store. So you can get some really cool stuff. You can get this. I kind of want this bottle. You can get sweatshirts. This is kind of trendy, right? Or if you have a little one, if you want to be really nerdy with the pie chart, I just like, that is super cute. All right, put this in here. You said 54? All right. Where is 54? Ah, we have a winner. Jessica Q from John Carroll University. Congratulations. You have won a $50 gift card. I will be reaching out to you after this and we'll set something up. So congratulations. I want to know what you get. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Katie Pierce. I'm really looking forward to seeing her presentation, and I'll let you take it from here, Katie.
Thanks so much, Ron. Hello, everyone. I am Katie Pierce. I am the Assistant Director of Analytics in the Office of Advancement at Syracuse University. I've been a Tableau user since 2016, and I've been with Syracuse University since about 2019. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right now. All right. So the dashboard that I'll be presenting today is our My Fundraiser Dashboard. The goal of this project was to provide our frontline fundraisers a comprehensive report for them to track engagement and cultivation within their portfolios in a way that was more interactive and hopefully more intuitive than the lists that they are able to access in our CRM tool. So this dashboard is published on our Tableau server environment for all our fundraisers. And there are just a couple of features I want to highlight before we dive into the dashboard. The first being that if you're not familiar with the Tableau server environment, normally the pages in a dashboard will show a preview of the graphics on each page. But for this particular dashboard, we're employing a couple of features that remove that preview. So first, what we're doing is we are directing a fundraiser who accesses the dashboard, we're directing them to their data. So when they log in, we're pulling the username of the person accessing the report and then automatically filtering the dashboard to display their portfolio. What we're also doing is using the row level security features in Tableau to block access for the frontline fundraisers from seeing each other's portfolios. So managers can go in and they can flip between the portfolios of their staff members, but frontline fundraisers can only access information about their portfolios. And that was to help them feel like this wasn't meant to be punitive or like their work was on display for the rest of the division. And before we go in, I just want to really quickly give an overview of each of the pages. So there are 4 pages in this workbook, and each one is focused on a different area of a fundraiser's portfolio. The first page has a series of lists of suggested prospects to contact and gifts that might need to be closed or keep an eye on. The second page, sorry, scroll down more, interactions. So that's focused on contacts with their prospects in portfolio. The third page, pipeline, is focused on solicitations and gifts, particularly what's coming up for solicitation. And the last page are their fundraising goals. Again, we didn't want this to be a punitive tool or focus too much on the goals, but they are there in the dashboard, and we put them at the end so that they were not highlighted in the report. So diving into the first page. Make this view a little better. All right, there we go. Hopefully everyone can see the screen well. All right, so this is the first page in the dashboard. Really quickly at the top, we have a couple of filters and parameters. This first one allows managers to switch between a fundraiser's portfolio. If a frontline fundraiser were to come in here though, switching between portfolios would just blank out all of the charts in the dashboard. Over to the right, we have a filter that allows fundraisers to filter the entire dashboard based on a managerial role they might have on a prospect. So there's a hierarchy to these roles, and they have duties regarding the cultivation of the prospects, and perhaps they want to focus their attention on those highest priority prospects. After that, we have a months parameter that allows them to filter some of the lists below. And then at the top, we just finishing up that row, we have a couple of metrics about the size of their portfolio. And then the 3 lists on the left of the dashboard are focused on prospects to contact. So fundraisers can see who's recently been added to their portfolio, who's had a contact over 6 months ago, and they can easily take action on these lists, because what we've enabled is if fundraisers click anywhere on these rows, we have a hyperlink that takes them directly to our CRM so that they could maybe schedule a contact for that prospect. Then over on the right, we have some GIFs that we want to highlight for our fundraisers, ones that are either coming up for solicitation in the near future or ones that are overdue. The expected ask is overdue. And in this list, fundraisers can click and either go to that gift called opportunity in our CRM or go directly to the prospect to maintain their data. All right. All right. So the second page again focuses on interactions or contacts within their portfolio. Up at the top, we again have that parameter that allows managers to switch between different fundraisers' portfolios. On the left, we've hidden some of the filters for this dashboard just to give us a little more space on the page. That role filter is also available, as well as this time frame parameter. So this adjusts the timeline on the bottom. So right now it's set to 12 months, being 6 months in the past and 6 months of planned work. But we can adjust it to say the maximum would be 1 year in the past and then 1 year of planned work, so that they can get a full scope of what the interactions with their portfolio is. And then finishing up the top header are these metrics on visits. So how fundraisers can use this page is they can scroll through the list of prospects, and what they're seeing is a timeline of their completed and planned interactions. So by scrolling through, they can easily see visually trends in outreach or exchanges with their prospects, or maybe where there are gaps in coverage. So we highlight key interactions with their portfolio in orange. That's where the prospect has been responsive to outreach and exchange. We've been in exchange with the prospect. So if I'm a fundraiser and I come in here, and if I see lots of orange dots on a prospect's timeline, I know that they've been particularly receptive to outreach. If I see a pattern of only blue dots, I know that they have not been very receptive to my outreach. Overdue interactions are this gray color, and there's the mark is just a little bit bigger to draw some attention to that. And then all the planned interactions are to the right of that red line that denotes today's date. If I want to know a little more information though about an interaction, I just have to hover, and there's more information about the interaction. If I need to make any edits, I can just click on any of the dots and go to update that interaction in the CRM, or directly go to the prospect. And then finally, on the right is a list of prospects who would fall off of this timeline chart. So that means that they don't have any planned or completed work within the selected time frame. So we just want to make sure that they don't fall off of our fundraisers' radar. All right. So that third page is focused on their pipeline of solicitations. We again have that filter to select different fundraisers' portfolio, the manager roles, some metrics about their solicitations and commitments, and also compared to their goals for the fiscal years up at the top. And then down here at the bottom, similar to the interactions page, we're using that same idea of a timeline of dots to show fundraisers what their upcoming work looks like. So gifts that have been solicited to prospects are highlighted in the orange, and the blue and gray denote planned solicitations that haven't been sent to the prospect yet. So if I'm a fundraiser and I'm checking to see if my planned work will help me reach my goals, I can click on this pie chart here, for example, that filters by the status of the gift. So I could come in here, click response pending. I've made that solicitation to the prospect. It filters the view and the totals are called out at the top. So I can compare what's been solicited and I'm waiting for a response on, and I compare that to my goals to know if I'm on track to make my goals. And then there's also some additional parameters and filters here to adjust the timeline. So I could plot everything by the response date or the ask date of the solicitation. I can switch up what years I want to see. Maybe it's the end of the current fiscal year, and I'm trying to make sure what I have planned for next year is adequate. And can also filter by gift type. And then similar to the interactions page where we called out a list of prospects who did not have interactions, we are also calling out prospects who do not have solicitations. So if I come in here and I'm trying to make sure I have enough planned work for the fiscal year, if I need more solicitations planned, I can just come to this list and try and see, you know, based on what type of plan someone's in, if they could be ready for a solicitation to help me reach goal. And then the last page in the workbook focuses on their fundraising goals. So again, up at the top, we have the filter to switch between portfolios and the filter to change managerial roles. And then we have a couple of gauge charts that show metrics on the size of their portfolio, so the number of households, and then the number of those households that are donors in this year. A few visit goals and qualifications, right? Verifying that someone is a viable prospect. And then down at the bottom, we have their fundraising goals, and something that was available in a feature that wasn't available in our CRM was the ability to show a fundraiser's performance against historical goals. So they could go in every fiscal year and see how they're doing towards that year's goals, but they didn't have the ability to see how they performed in other years. But in Tableau, we've been able to incorporate that. So if they hover over any of their goals, they could see how they've performed historically. All right, so that wraps up the overview of this fundraising portfolio management tool we built out at Syracuse. I think I've left enough time for any questions or comments people might have.
Anyone who's brave and unmutes himself and asks a question gets to go first. Otherwise, I have a list of questions from the chat.
I'll be brave. Eric Rothdeutsch, Director of Data Analytics, Vanderbilt. This is awesome. Very, very cool to see. I just had a question about the goals, specifically on this view. Where are you defining those, and how do they vary from DO fundraiser to fundraiser? Because obviously, if you're controlling access and everyone logs into their page automatically, I would assume that the goals would vary from person to person. Is that something you're maintaining in a data warehouse in the background, or is that a field within Citrus, I should say?
Hi, Eric. Yeah, that's an excellent question. So we do have different goals depending on someone's role or division that they're in within advancement. And we have a data source on Tableau server that has all that information, and this dashboard then links to that. And as you switch between a fundraiser's portfolios, the goals do update to reflect the goals for their role.
Cool, thank you.
While we're on this dashboard, there was a question about how you made the half donut gauges. I guess it actually says, how awesome are they? But I think that might be a good question of how did you make them?
That is an excellent question, and I absolutely cannot take credit for building them out. I just did a quick Google and found a really in-depth tutorial on how to build them out. It is a little involved, just because you have to, it's trick Tableau a little bit with some dual axes charts and setting up a lot of calculated fields to do that. But I agree, I think they look really cool in the end.
Thank you. Haiti put in the chat a link to YouTube to learn how to use those. So that is great. Thank you. We've had, Katie must have some Syracuse friends on the call because there's some people answering questions that only inside baseball would know, I think. So one of the questions kind of overall, there's been a variety of those, but like, what has been the response to these dashboards? How long have you been using them? Have you seen any improvements or less of your prospects falling off? Those types of things.
Another really great question. So we went public with this dashboard, I think in April of this year. And I think there's been a really good response amongst our fundraisers to being able to see the cultivation of their portfolios visually. And some of them have even mentioned that it's easier to prevent prospects who are on the periphery of their portfolios from falling off.
Some of the security questions we've gotten is, you mentioned that you only can see your own fundraiser page. How does that work for management, admin assistants, those types of support roles, or roles that need to see multiple views?
That's a really great question. And without getting too technical, what we're doing is you can pull the username of the person accessing the dashboard. And basically, I just wrote some fields that said if the person has a portfolio within the data set, and if that fundraiser's role is a frontline fundraiser, then they do not have access to see other people's portfolios. Otherwise, anyone else can see basically everything. So that way, any managers, other people on my team who help fundraisers use these dashboards, senior leadership, they would all have access to see all the data that way.
And I don't know, Katie, you probably can't get to it quickly, or if anyone on your team can, or anyone on the call, someone was asking for a resource on setting up that security. So if anybody has their Googling fingers ready and knows of a good link to help educate people on how you would do this, that would be very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at this data set, there's questions about like the size of the data set you're using, if you're only using what comes out of your CRM, or if you're having to supplement it with any other data.
Ooh, another really great question. So all of the data is coming out of our CRM, and we've been using Tableau Prep quite a bit, actually. And I actually used, I think, maybe 10 prep files to create the queries for this dashboard. It was quite complicated to define who's part of the portfolio, then pulling in all their contacts, all of the gifts, and then layering on fundraiser goals. But it is all pulling from the CRM.
Great, thank you. I think our time is up and it's probably Michelle's time. Ron, does that look about right to you?
Yeah, that's perfect. Katie, wonderful job. I love the elegance of your solution, and I am sure that fundraisers love it. They can see the data, right? They can see the results, and it's very clean. That design is fundraiser friendly, fantastic. So thank you so much for that. That was wonderful. I am going to hand it over now to Michelle.
All right, thank you so much. I'll go ahead and get my screen share going. All right, get this up. Okay, does that look good for everyone? All right, so I'm so excited to give this presentation. We're going to take a little bit of a turn and sort of zoom out and look at sort of Tableau and advancement in doing fundraiser metrics. It's sort of a 30,000 foot view here. What I wanted to do, well, when I first was talking to Mohammed about giving this presentation, he asked me if I had any dashboards that were accessible and unintimidating. And I thought the best way to show our trajectory through Tableau was really to walk you through how this one dashboard in fundraiser metrics has evolved over the last 4 years at the University of Denver. So my name is Michelle Zadlangen. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I have 5 years of experience in Tableau. I started in late 2017 and actually built DU Advancement's very first dashboard, which is the dashboard that you are about to see. It was our very first foray into Tableau. It was my very first foray into Tableau. And it's been a lot of fun growing my own expertise alongside the sophistication of the reporting program at DU. Another thing to know is I have 2 years of experience as a prospect development analyst before I transitioned over into business intelligence and reporting. So I'm the strategic liaison who primarily supports the frontline fundraisers and our development leadership. And I believe in paying the dog tax. So this is my dog, Evelyn. She is a Black Lab Golden Retriever mix, and she is snoring behind me right now. So please accept this prepaid tax in case she does start barking in the background. Okay, so I want to give you a little bit of an overview of fundraiser metrics as a concept at the University of Denver over the last 4 years. So in 2018, we were still in our old database, which was Banner. It was our very first dashboard that we built. We only tracked dollars raised and visits. And this dashboard was Excel spreadsheet based. I had to go into the database, run a SQL query, export that out to Excel, and then refresh the Tableau dashboard that way. So if you are concerned that you can't start publishing Tableau dashboards because you don't have an active link into your database, let me tell you, people will take what they can get. So just get started. You can sort of see the trajectory over time. We did do a conversion in summer of 2018. So that led to a revamp of this dashboard in 2019. We've added and adjusted our metrics along the way. And you can see it took us fully 3 years of doing manual refreshes, first by me, and then thankfully later by student staff, until we had a fully automated daily refresh of this dashboard. So again, if you don't have a perfectly linked data source, just get started. That's going to be part of the theme of this presentation. And then where we are now in 2021, I want to give you a little bit of an overview. Okay, but first, the embarrassing parts. So baby's first dashboard. In 2018, the University of Denver did not have a programmatic, systematic way to track fundraisers metrics. So we were sort of engaging into a brand new world and exploring from there. And this was the very first instance of our progress to goal dashboard. Along the left, you can see these very sloppily redacted bars are blocking out our fundraisers' names. But you can see this is all we had, just dollars raised and visits tracked. There were some definitions over to the right. I've got some lines in here that I use to indicate the goal, where we should be in the year and where we were as a division overall. But this was it. And again, based off of Excel, I refreshed it every Monday. It was delivered out to a very small portion of individuals. So this was like our very first starting shot foray into this. We ended up converting to a different CRM in 2018. So in 2019, we really had the opportunity to do a big upgrade. And I'll preview my expectations here because I wanted to have from this, which was very simple and small, you only had access to the percentages. So you knew how many, what someone's goal was, and you knew how many dollars they had raised, but you really had no further detail from there to really be able to qualify or quality control that work. So what I wanted to do was provide in depth, a really expansive dashboard that fundraisers could use to explore their progress. And you can see where that took me were all of the dashboards. So this is where I started with the 2019 and 2020 version of this dashboard. You can see I still got a lot of bar charts going on. I wanted to use up all of the space that I had access to me, for better or for worse. It requires a lot of eye movement around this screen. But you do have access to the data that you need, both at a university level, so at our division with roll-ups across the top, and also on an individual fundraiser level. So this was the dashboard for individual fundraisers to get their progress at a glance. You can see over here on the left, all of the different 4 metrics that we were tracking at the time, how people were progressing towards their goals. There's this little goal bar and an on-track target here. Love some big ass numbers. That is actually the Tableau term for them. And then we started actually providing expected dollars in the pipeline over here to the right. And the reason why this subsection is called buttons on buttons on buttons is because this was from a version of Tableau pre-buttons. So I had to create all of these little buttons across the bottom as sheets and do all of that sort of filter functionality so that fundraisers could look at the details of what was going on. So if they were to click the dollars dashboard button, it would bring them in to something that looked like this, tracking their dollars fundraised over time. You can see the fiscal year across the bottom here. We had some big ass numbers across the top that they could track. And then there was also a drill through of detail that you could actually see the individual gifts that the fundraiser had credit on so that they could double check that they were getting credit for all of the things that they could. I didn't bring those in here, obviously, for, just to keep the data safe. But so there was a lot of clicking around. So you had these views for dollars. This was the visits view, so they could see how many visits they were tracking. And this little brown bar down here were unique prospects visited. So you could sort of see over time if a fundraiser was engaging with the same prospect over and over again, or really getting a good spread of portfolio coverage. And again, there's drill through to details. I'm taking up this huge amount of space and really requiring fundraisers to do a lot of clicking around. So these are some of the additional views that were a part of that dashboard. I also included data definitions. So on each of these views, you can see there's a little button in the bottom that says help. And that help button would always bring you to a definitions page. Again, very early idea of how to actually engage with these. We had some metrics on view counts for this dashboard. And what we found is no one was going to the definitions page. So I knew that I needed a way to integrate these and to make it a little bit easier. This dashboard also correlated with our conversion into CRM. So we went from Banner to Ellucian CRM Advance. And one of the complaints that I kept hearing from the fundraisers about the CRM was how much clicking they had to do. So of course, that made me think about this dashboard and how much clicking and moving around they have to do to really get a detailed view of how they're progressing towards their goals for the year. So that led to another version of this dashboard that we were finally able to get automation in the underlying detail. So while we were converting over to the new data source that was able to refresh overnight, I had the opportunity to re-envision this dashboard. So you can see a few of the choices I've made. I've made the view a little bit smaller. I've made it a little bit more concise. There's less use of space, so your eye doesn't have to move quite as much. We still have our same basic 4 metrics for solicited dollars, qualifications, visits, and major gift solicitations. We also have some leadership annual giving officers, so I always separate them out a little bit because their metrics for solicitations are tracked a little bit differently. But this was finally, and then this is the individual fundraiser sheet. So I was trying to get to those speedometer gauges, but I didn't want to have to do all of the data manipulation in the background that it used to require. So we settled with donuts, and I went donut crazy in this version of the dashboard. But you can really see at a glance how much someone is fundraising. Again, you can see the fundraiser's progress at large across all of these dimensions. And then the other thing that I'm really proud of with this version of the dashboard are these detail views down below. No longer did the fundraisers have to click between different views to actually see the detail and the information about what was contributing towards their progress towards goals. And actually, this is a PowerPoint, so you can't see this, but right here, there's a drop down for different views. So using a filter, I was able to layer the different detail views on top of one another so that you could toggle between them and look at the detail view that you were interested in seeing without having like 18 different Excel spreadsheet kind of tables mucking up the beauty of this view. If I do say, I really like this view, but it kept going. We had some dollars in the pipeline, so this got a little bit of an upgrade. And then we also had sort of overview at a glance how our division was performing. So these were all different views that I had in that dashboard. Now, this is our latest version of this dashboard. So again, keep in mind, this is 4 years of development and learning and developing in Tableau. So where we got to, and I'll kind of circle back on lessons learned. But I made a note here, Lisa finally got her dials. That's my director. She wanted those speedometer dials so badly for so many years, and we finally got it. There was an update to where we could do it using calculated fields instead of actually updating the data source in the background, just like Katie was discussing earlier. I love that we're all very excited about the dials. So that's where we landed. So I made some changes again to the dashboard. Over across the top, you can see the overview of how we're performing as a division in each area. So instead of having a separate dashboard for that, I integrated it into the advancement division overview. We still have these charts here so we can track all the fundraisers against one another, so we can really see who the top performers are and see who might be struggling. This is all available to everyone, so everyone can see how everyone else is doing. And these are the final metrics that we ended up settling on. So we have dollars raised, major gift solicitations. We're gearing up towards a campaign. So we realized it was really important to review our prospect qualifications. So that became one of our important metrics. And then of course, visits. Our leadership annual gift officers are down here at the bottom. And then since our fundraisers were doing qualification work, I started tracking the dollars that they were receiving in conjunction with those qualification visits that weren't necessarily major gift sort of proposal based fundraised dollars. So I included a little view down here at the bottom so that our leadership could really see how much money a fundraiser was making based off of major gift efforts and how much money was sort of incidentally coming in alongside those qualification visits. And this is the individual fundraiser view that we have ended up on. This is how this view looks this year. So as you can see, we've got the speedometer dials. They're very popular. We've got the big S numbers with how people are tracking towards their goals in the actual number of visits and fundraised dollars, but they can actually see what that percentage is towards their goal. And then another one of these little sort of overlaid detail views so that they can look in. And this is it, 2 views. This is what they have. And I think that this is the happiest that our fundraisers have been, because it's really simplistic. You can look at it in a glance and know how you're doing. And it's all like clearly available and accessible. It's a little bit hard to see because this is a PowerPoint, but there are also a lot of tooltips and layering that's happening in this dashboard. So there's like a depth of information that's available, even though the view itself is really simplistic. And just to remind you, this is where we started. So the things that I wanted to talk about in this presentation were really about sort of the lessons learned over time for me for this dashboard, the way that this has grown over time and the experience that I have had in developing and changing and upgrading the way that this dashboard has functioned over the last 4 years has just been incredible. So I would say to anyone out there who doesn't have fundraiser metrics tracking, or they don't have really concise, or they're looking to have Tableau reporting for those metrics, just get started. This is everyone was very happy with this version of the dashboard because we hadn't had anything before. And it has been an incredible journey, sort of upgrading and fixing and aligning. So I do want to spend a minute or two just talking about some of the lessons learned. So again, focusing on your minimally viable product. What's the easiest, simplest, smallest thing that you can deliver so that people can start actually using your reporting in your dashboard? I've found over time, as you can see in the development of that dashboard, that less is really more. With the second version of the dashboard, I wanted to provide so much, and my brain translated that to big and plentiful and just dashboards everywhere and cool functionality. And I found that that really wasn't what my end users cared about. I thought that I was really cool using Tableau, but I needed to meet my end users where they were and sort of help them focus and strategize rather than just giving them as much information and expecting them to collate that all together. I also found that layering is your friend. It's why I used an iceberg version for this. You really want your surface to be very clear and concise. And if you want to provide details, create a way to sort of hide that beneath the surface so that it's accessible, but that it's not sort of visually overwhelming in your dashboard. And then the last thing I want to make sure that I talk about, and this is probably the best reason to start doing clear metrics reporting, is that transparency is power. We've done a lot on my team to improve our relationships with our fundraisers just by providing the data that was underlying their progress to goals. So giving them clear and easy access to what those activities were that were counting towards their visit goals. It gave us a few really valuable things. Not only did they trust us more because they had access to the underlying data, but also as sort of an incidental thing that I was really happy with, our fundraisers started doing their own quality control in the system because they could look at their fundraising metrics. They could see all of their visits that were counting towards it. And they could say, oh, I must have forgotten to put in this visit, or maybe I entered this visit activity incorrectly. And so they would go back and fix it and then confirm it in the refresh of the dashboard. So that was absolutely my favorite thing that came out of this. It's, I think, as we all know, it can be really challenging to get fundraisers, or especially like our people-oriented colleagues, to understand and appreciate how important the data and the database is and how important that data entry is. So it was such a powerful aspect of this that people really got engaged in doing their own quality control. It was absolutely my favorite. So now I think I want to spend a few minutes and just show you what our actual dashboard looks like today. And then I want to spend plenty of time allowing space for questions because I think I might have run through that a little bit quickly. So let me show you our dashboard currently. A lot of people had questions about the data sources underlying. The way that I ended up finding that this was managed the most easily in terms of data performance and being able to have end users really move through this dashboard with lightning quick changeovers was to have an initial SQL, custom SQL for each of the individual views and really sort of filter them down. So this is actually connected to our database. And then we've dropped in initial SQL in here. And one of the benefits of using initial SQL is that you can do these multiple temp tables, which you can't do if you just drop custom SQL into this space here. So we have a lot of custom SQL, and then in the custom SQL query, just selecting everything from the table that I need. And that creates a really smooth user experience in people being able to navigate around these different fields, because all of these dollar fields are relying on their own individual, very small, bespoke data source. So that moving around and filtering in these tables is really easy. And then the other thing I really wanted to make sure that I showed was just the functionality of this overlaying. So this is basically, this is just a vertical field box to keep containment. And then I've just layered all of these views on top of one another. So you can shift through and see all the different details pop up for each of these fields, so that the fundraisers can look here and then very easily go down below and see all of the detail of their visits, of their solicitations, and of the gifts that they have solicitor credit on, so that they can catch if there's gifts that they still need to have solicitor credit on, or if there's visits that they've maybe forgotten to add into the system. Again, a really great quality control tool. Okay, so it's 11:50. I want to leave some space for questions. I can't see where anything is. Who's got questions?
Thanks, Michelle. One question, well, it's kind of a multiple part question, I think probably a lot of us are curious about is, how do you strategize around making updates for specific workbooks? Do you have a regular cadence? Do you do it once a year, every few months? How do you prioritize updating dashboards with other priorities and projects?
Yeah, great question. So part of that process for us at the University of Denver was tied to the fiscal year changeovers. Because we didn't really have a fundraiser metrics tracking program back in 2017, or at least not a way to report on it systematically, it really grew year over year alongside that. So when the metrics changed and we had some slightly different definitions that we wanted to track for our fundraisers, that gave me the opportunity to then go back into the dashboard and sort of rethink what I was delivering in it. So it kind of dovetailed really nicely that every fiscal year, our leadership had some tweaks and adjustments to the metrics that we wanted to track. And I used those opportunities to sort of up-level the display of the dashboard. And I will say it took considerably less time every year, every change that I made, because I was scaling down and making things more concise. And also I had an additional year of Tableau expertise built on top of that.
Eric commented that it's a credible example of not letting perfect get in the way of good. How did you manage expectations along the way to allow this type of iterative change?
Sure. That was really tough. There were a lot of times where I felt really excited about a version of the dashboard that I had gotten up and would bring to my director, and she would just immediately see all the different places for improvement. It was definitely, it just took time, I think, and that was the most important thing. We started out with something really basic. I think part of having Tableau being a new tool at the university sort of helped us to manage expectations as we moved through. And I think getting really clear data definitions on all of the metrics that we were tracking were increasingly important, so that we could be really clear about how the data in the database was connecting to people's actual progress towards their goals. And their metrics. I think that that was probably the most important thing that we did.
There was a specific question about have you considered adding a dashboard action on the gauge chart to show high detail instead of a separate parameter control? If you have tried that, did you find that users didn't understand or get the clicking?
Have I used a filtered action on the gauges themselves? Is that the question?
Yeah, it said a dashboard action on the gauge charts. Yeah, instead of show hide.
Yeah, I haven't tried that. I will explore.
And then you had showed the initial SQL in your data sources. Are you finding that's made a big impact on how quickly things are loading compared to previous versions?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the previous versions for this dashboard, I tried to get all of the detail in, and it was really sort of clunky data sources that had too much information and things that I didn't necessarily need. I was relying a lot on Tableau calculated fields to actually do the percentage towards goals or to do a lot of calculations. And what I found was that doesn't always lead to the least buggy user experience with the dashboard itself. So I'm really happy with how we ended up with these custom SQL queries that are very specific to what we're doing. They're programmed to update year over year so that we, when we move into our new fiscal year, knock on wood that they don't change our metrics again. I think after the 4th iteration, we might be really close to having a stable metrics tracking system. But it's designed to just convert year over year. The biggest thing that holds us up with getting this live is actually setting the individual fundraiser goals and getting those data into the system. But I found that this is really great. Another thing that I don't know, I think I had it on a slide, but I might not have mentioned it. Having extracts has been really important for the user functionality. So even if you have a really large data set, running that extract and allowing it to refresh at a certain time, usually really early in the morning, could really help with the processing and filtering of the dashboard.
Have you been asked about pacing? I know that's something our organization for goals, we frequently get asked to pace towards goal. Have you considered adding that to this dashboard?
Yeah, so you'll see in my initial dashboard, we did have some pacing. Let me get this back up here. So these on track thresholds, I had them here and also in one of the earlier versions of the dashboard. Let's see. In here. So I have some pacing and on track targets here. I ended up getting rid of them because our fundraising and movement through the year isn't always linear. And I didn't want our early fiscal year sort of like building up steam to fundraisers engaging with their portfolios to be to sort of make it look really bad, I guess, that people weren't sort of tracking towards their goals. It's a really rough start to the fiscal year. We also, like our leadership annual giving officers who fundraise at the lower giving level, they do a lot of work for our 1 day of giving, and that happens in May. So they're not going to be on track until almost the very end of our fiscal year, which ends at the end of June. So I really just didn't find them that informative for people because, you know, our fundraisers don't function on a perfect, like, if they have 52 weeks to get 50 visits done, they're not going to do 1 visit a week. It's just not how they function. So I found that having that in the system, it didn't add anything. And I thought it was stressing people out more than it was actually helping people strategize. So I did end up removing that in the later versions of the dashboard.
Great, thank you. I think we're out of time for Q&A.
Yeah.
Ron, want to wrap us up? You're still muted, Ron. I know Ron has a fun slide at the end, so I think he's having a little bit of problems getting back on. Ron has one more giveaway to wrap us up with.
My
Oh, there
Zoom
you are.
crashed. Zoom crashed. I'm back. All
Yay.
right.
I was trying to just like make stuff up and try to get people to stay.
I did. I have fun stuff to show. I do. We have the final giveaway. And Michelle, that was wonderful. I love seeing the evolution. I always tell my students this is an iterative process. And like the piano, you are constantly getting better. So let me share my screen. I'm getting things popping up here. Please let me share. All right, second giveaway. All right, here it is. It's a little bit of a challenge. I want to crowdsource this and make it fun, and interactive. So the second giveaway, I'd love for you all to build your own functioning random winner generator. So something similar to what I created, but make it your own. This is something, I don't know if you can Google it or not, but if whatever you want, every resource out there, just I use parameter actions and table calculations and all sorts of fun stuff. I want you to make it your own. So you can use your own data set, the Superstore data set. Please just include your name and org, and then email your package workbook to ron@thesolosgroup.com, and we'll pick a winner based on functionality, creativity, and aesthetics. And then the winner will receive a $50 gift certificate. Every dashboard you ever build will teach you something new. And I think just like this one, it taught me something new as well. You just have different use cases. And you know, the thing that's really meaningful that I heard from Michelle is really kind of understanding your users, so that we talk about the technical skills, it's those soft skills, it's that relationship building, which is so important. So please submit those and then save the date for our next session, February 16th from 12 to 1. I just want to thank everyone for coming, and thank you, extra special thank you to Michelle and Katie for their awesome presentations. It's really exciting. There's more questions than we had time for. I'm sure people can reach out to you. I know that Michelle mentioned how data entry practices improved offline. So thank you all. I'll give you back. Yeah, we're just on time. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and thanks
Hey,
again for
Ron.
coming. Yes.
Ron, what's your due date for the contest?
Oh, that is a good point. Let's make it before Thanksgiving. So let's do it a week from now. So the 24th. Perfect. All right. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks again for coming. Take care.